want me to hurt my knees, do you? If you could do one thing to me tonight, what would it be? No!
Fucking told you. We are talking Crone Wood. This is a 2016 found footage, low budget Irish indie horror film written and directed by Mark Sheridan. Now the logline of this one is fairly easy. This is Blair Witch meets The Wicker Man. So it's a found footage film, as I've mentioned, and it focuses on this young couple who have just met, and they've been spending the kind of like the past 24 hours just doing kind of like, you know, coupley stuff. And now they kind of want to continue the adventures. So they decide, you know, they're in rural Ireland, and I believe it's somewhere just outside of Dublin. It's November. What they're going to do? Let's go camping. Why not? So they buy some camping equipment off to the woods, and this particular area called Crone Wood, or apparently it used to be called that, and then the name has changed, etc. There's your first red flag. So off they go, and they decide they're going to go off the beaten track and all of this, and inevitably they get very deep into the kind of the woods, and they find this kind of like this ruin, and apparently this ruin that they've actually got the location shooting at is something called the Hellfire Club in real life, and apparently it actually had at some point been purported to have some type of connection to devil worshippers, which is pretty interesting. Although this film is nothing really to do with that exactly. Anyway, they kind of start to see strange figures in the woods that have got these kind of like sinister looking masks on, and seem to be following them. And then all their stuff gets stolen and had to go deeper and deeper in the woods. And then the second half of the movie ends up more like a kind of like Wicker Man situation, where they meet other characters, and initially it looks like maybe these guys can get, you know, find some help. But if you've seen horror films before, you know things might not be exactly what they seem, and these villages may well be some type of like pagan ritual worshippers of something or another, and may not have best intentions, you know, to hand there. So let's discuss Crone Wood, what works and what doesn't work. So we'll start off with what I think works first of all. So one of the main strengths of this film is that there's a great chemistry between our two protagonists, because you really actually feel these guys are absolutely the characters that they're playing, and I almost maybe think they know each other in real life, because the chemistry is palpable between these two. They actually just, the way they kind of like talk to each other, and kind of their dialogue is very natural sounding, very believable, and they absolutely inhabit the characters that they're playing. So it's very, very good for those two guys, very believable, because so you're buying into the characters. So you believe these characters, and that's a great start for a film. And then we kind of obviously, the actual location shooting here is great. Now, clearly a meagre budget film, but the filmmakers here really make the location shooting work for them. I mean, it's obviously a very, very rural location, which is great, because obviously you've got, you know, areas of kind of with no one else there that kind of really kind of sells this, you know, a very beautiful, but at the same time, you know, somewhat oppressive kind of like woodland area, and this great, you know, this great location of this kind of like this ruin or whatever it's meant to, you know, I don't know what it was meant to be originally, but some type of bunker or something. And that all looks great. And I think the actual, the palpable sense of tension which grows throughout the movie, this is not like a jump scares film. I mean, there might be one or two jump scares, but it's not a film that relies on that necessarily. But what it does do is kind of have this growing sense of paranoia and tension about what's happening and what's kind of going on here. And I also think, I mean, I will come on to negatives again, and in some ways I feel this film is predictable. In another way, I wasn't quite sure where it was going to end up, because when we get into the third act, it almost seems like when we get to our kind of our villager types, think, oh, I don't quite know what their end game is, if that makes sense. And you're thinking, oh, you know, is it sinister or is it not? You know, I won't go any further than that. So but I was curious to kind of where it was going to end. I couldn't quite see exactly what was going to happen. So what doesn't work for me? Now, despite what I've just said about why I wasn't sure it was going to end up, what I did call straight away, there's a kind of a twist involved, which I think is so obvious about, you know, again, I'm not going to give it away, but there's a twist here and a kind of a character reveal that I think, man, that is just like, I saw that coming a mile off. And then we have, to me, I think the better half of the movie is the first half, because that's definitely where you had this sort of sense of tension, where there's less kind of characters on screen. The actual visuals there, I think, are strong, because you have this kind of this night scenes with these kind of people doing weird stuff, and it looks, you could have think, oh my god, what's going to happen? What, you know, where are these guys going to go? Where's it going to end up? Even though I kind of suspected something might happen, which it did. But then we get to our kind of our villages section, and it changes direction so dramatically in regards to the film. And that to me is where I felt some of the logic fell a bit short, because we have this, when we get into this kind of like the slightly more built up area, it just seems odd to me that I mean, at this point there's nothing really bad that's happened, but we have a character that our protagonist go into someone's house, the door's open, there's candles lit, but they're walking around someone's house that isn't there. I mean, who would do that? It just seems silly to me. Clearly, if there's candle lit, there's someone around. And it looks like there are multiple houses and stuff, so it's not just like it's one lone house. So they didn't really it didn't ring quite true, that one. I thought that was a little bit of a poor writing on there. And we were introduced to a whole bunch of other characters. And I've got to say, I didn't think the acting was as strong. I think some of the characters from the kind of, when we get to our village, somewhat overact. And it's like, oh, you're not acting suspicious at all, are you? So they're kind of like, they're a little bit too hammy and a little bit too like, I've got something else going on sort of face. So I didn't think the acting for the other characters was as strong as our central protagonist. So it's a shame, because those two were so strong. I mean, it's not terrible acting, but it's just like overacting. And it's not everyone, but there are one or two here that just overact. And it signposts what's going to happen. Not that it's not obvious anyway. And I don't think what happens in that second half is quite as strong. The sense of tension kind of goes, and I don't think it ever really recovers. And then we get to the end of the film, the very last scene. I don't really understand what happened, if I'm honest. And why I say that is because, how can I put this without spoiling anything? The last line that is spoken in the film by a character then contradicts what happens at the end. I didn't really get it. So maybe I'm missing something, or maybe it was just, you know, the line was spoken untruth. I don't know, but it didn't really. It kind of, why say that? It just didn't quite make sense. Yeah, so I wasn't quite buying that. But overall, this is a worthy found footage film. If you like a creepy atmosphere, you know, very well shot, you know, good acting by our kind of, at least our main protagonists, main characters, with some low budget but effective kind of camera work and kind of, you know, mask design and stuff like that. I mean, some of the masks look a little bit too obviously kind of like, this looks threatening or anything, but there you go. But nonetheless, I was engaged throughout the movie. This movie wasn't a film where I kind of started losing interest. I suppose another film it might be a little bit similar to, in a way, was The Ritual. I mean, The Ritual's a fantastic film. It's just not as good as The Ritual, but it has almost a similar feel. That was kind of like almost like a pagan sort of like fairy tale in the woods, and it's just similar to a degree, but it's more like Blair Witch meets The Wicker Man. So I'll give it a slightly above average score, this one. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. I actually think it's worth watching if you like either of those two films, or if you like found footage films, it's probably worth a watch. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.